Years ago, I was at a party and I was with my aunt and her sister had just been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She was in her 40s, I believe, or 50s. And she had told us that had she been on top of her testing, that they would have caught it earlier. So she said that one bit of advice that she gives every woman, and especially as they go into their 40s and 50s and beyond, is to go get a vaginal ultrasound. That had she had that test done, then she believes they would have caught it. So today's episode is very important and it talks about that in particular, listening to your body. And if you don't feel right, please go get it checked out because we don't want to mess around as we're going into perimenopause and menopause as we're more susceptible to other things. So before we jump into the episode, I just want to do a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for almost 20 years. I'm a menopause educator and a menopause researcher. And I'm also the co-founder of a company called wearemorphus.com. And we empower you to take control of your health and symptoms as you go into this next phase of your life. Today, I'm speaking with Lorene Sauro. She's a registered holistic nutritionist and has witnessed firsthand what it's like to struggle with endometriosis, arthritis, and cancer. Looking for answers, she became her best client, studying holistic nutrition and functional medicine. Her experience and education have helped her develop recipes, programs, and protocols that clients and colleagues love. She believes in a true integrative path to healing, and she wants to share it with the world. Lorene has been a holistic nutrition professional for 24 years and a food professional for 30 years. She's the co-founder of the Canadian Holistic Nutrition Conference, which I hosted for over 5 years, and the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals. And she has taught hundreds of holistic nutrition students and graduates, helping them with their educational and professional needs. She founded the Functional Microbiome Program, the Functional Hormone Balance Program, and in 2017, she received the CSNA AA Lifetime Achievement Award. That's the one that I received in 2018, just a year later. Well, I'm excited to introduce you to Lorene. She was my professor. She taught me when I was in nutrition school, and I know that you will learn a lot from her. Now, here's Lorene. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Lorene.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy you're here too. And for all of you who are listening, I've known Lorene for a very long time because Lorene was one of my teachers at nutrition school. So you actually taught me one of my favorite courses, which was the alternative diets courses. And I remember when I was doing it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try every single thing out there. I'm going to test it as an N of one. It was literally one of my favorite courses. So Lorene is the queen when it comes to digestion. She helped me with my book. I'm so grateful for you, Lorene. And I'm excited that you're on my podcast.
Well, I'm very glad to be here.
So, Lorene, I know you had some crazy things happen to you in the last little while, and in particular, a story that is very important that we share with our audience. So I'm just going to hand the microphone over to you and let you share it.
Okay, well, so as Andrea has said, obviously, I've been a holistic nutritionist for a long, long time, counseled many people on many things. And but last summer, I had a horrific experience with my own health, with a lot of lessons in it. I'll give you the short version. I ended up having an very large ovarian tumor, about 2.7 kilos, removed from me. And of course, they do a hysterectomy, oophorectomy. And in my case, because the tumor was so large, it was pressing on my colon. And they gave me a temporary ileostomy, which has been reversed, I'm very grateful for that. So basically, the whole purpose of telling this story is to sort of help people understand that nutrition is important, but it doesn't necessarily mean you prevent. So prevention for me has a different meaning now. And as a result of what I went through, and I now know based on symptoms that obviously disappeared once I had the surgery, that I actually had this tumor for years. Easily 2015, I had discomfort in that area. And, we always try to dismiss these things, right, Andrea? We just say, oh, it's probably, especially when you have knowledge. Knowledge can be a dangerous thing because you go, well, maybe it's this, maybe that. I thought, and this is silly, I thought the pain I was experiencing was like phantom ovulation pain, because I had endometriosis, throughout most of my life, even though most of the time it was under control. I had learned to control it. I'd learned to balance out my hormones. I wasn't having any major issues with it when I went into menopause. And but after menopause, I still had this ovulation pain, and I thought, well, this is strange. Maybe it's like the ovaries are trying to do something. That's what I thought. And then it got worse, right? It got more intense, and it was happening more often. And again, I finally, after having an acute incident in the spring where I was having trouble eating, I went to my doctor, and she ordered an ultrasound and blood tests, and she said there were 2 fibroids there, which is weird. How do you have fibroids after menopause? But apparently it's a thing. You can't have them. But also there was this tumor that we didn't know about, and it was pressing on my stomach. The 3 of them, the 2 fibroids and the tumor were pressing on my stomach so that I couldn't eat. And I got very thin and very weak. Then I got hospitalized. Then they discovered the tumor, and the rest, as they say, is history. But what was fascinating, so I have had this tumor for so many years, yet it never metastasized.
Hmm.
I
And
never.
why do you think that is?
I think it's my diet. I think it's the lifestyle that I've led. I don't drink. I hope you can't hear my cat in the background.
That's okay. We like cats.
That's good because he's meowing away. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do recreational drugs. I do eat very, very well. And mind you, I cook, and I like to have my, I don't deprive myself of anything when it came to food. This is why not being able to eat was so shocking to me, because what are you doing to me, body? I want to eat. And but I was taking lots of, I've been eating organically for 30 years. I got regular fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, etc. I was taking tons of supplements, and I even remember like 2 years ago, I was doing 2 or 3 years ago, I was doing a medicinal mushrooms workshop. So I'm trying all these medicinal mushrooms, and I've got other things that are anti-cancer that I'm taking in terms of supplements. And I'm going, cancer wouldn't dare reach me. And yet I already had it and I didn't know it. But I think that all of that work is why it never metastasized. I think that's why, and I don't know, Andrea, if you've ever spent a lot of time with the medical community and how they talk, but I laugh because I was trying to talk to the doctors about this aspect of, well, why didn't it metastasize? Right? I couldn't get them to admit that I had it since 2015. They're like, oh no, you're probably, no, I'm not mistaken. But the other thing is, and I said, my recovery's been quite good and fairly straightforward. And they said, well, you were so healthy when you came in. I'm like, what are you talking about? You were giving me blood transfusions. Then you had to give me a hysterectomy to remove this thing from me. And what do you mean I was so healthy? But what they meant was,
I was going to say, I know what they meant, but go ahead.
Yeah, no high blood pressure, no blood sugar issues, no cholesterol issues. Any of the benchmarks that they use to determine health, I passed. So why is that? What could that be? Well, there's two, I think there's 2 aspects. Number one, certain conditions follow one sort of pathway, metabolic syndromes, and then other conditions may not be related to metabolic syndrome in any way, shape, or form, like ovarian cancer. I mean, there might be some cancers that are, involved with metabolic syndrome, but this one obviously isn't, right? And mine was not a hormone-driven ovarian cancer. It was just a tumor, just a big, fat, large tumor. And but what I have taken away from this is that it was my healthy lifestyle that allowed me to not be in a situation where I'm looking at chemo and radiation. And, once you enter that realm, your ability to not prevent it from coming back goes down. It's
so you
not
didn't need, you didn't need chemo or radiation?
They found, and they tested me right, left, and center. Okay, they tested every tissue in my body, I swear. And they, lots of CAT scans and nothing, absolutely nothing.
So for those of you who are listening on the podcast, Lorene's shaking her head no. But if you're watching on
Oh,
YouTube, then you would see. So because most people are consuming this through the
audio.
podcast. So you didn't need any.
No,
Mm.
literally, from the time I was originally hospitalized to the time I went to a lovely respite home for 2 months to recover. It was glorious. Anyway, it was like about a month
Mm.
from like that it got diagnosed to having the hysterectomy, oophorectomy, and being released from the hospital. It's about a month.
Lorene, were you in? So are you okay to share your age? I know you're pretty proud of it, but
I'm 67.
so you're 67. And then when did you go in? So you said you sailed through menopause. How old were you when you went into menopause?
Well, this is the problem. I don't really actually know because I sailed through it, but I would say 54-ish.
54. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
so I guess going back to my question, one of the things, and I know you said this right off the top of like something that's important for everyone to take away from this, is that you felt something in your body, you felt that something wasn't right, but you didn't go get it checked out. And I am so adamant about that. Because I always tell our listeners is that if you are feeling something is off, please go to your doctor and get it checked out because your body knows best. You know yourself best. Now, and it's interesting that you said, oh, you thought you were having phantom periods, and it's so true. And it is something that is real. But if it's pain that's lasting all the time and for a long time, please go, the takeaway is please go get it checked out. And years ago, I remember I was at my aunt's house and her sister was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And she had said to me, she was talked to me and my mom at the time, and she said if there was one bit of advice that she could give women, older women, let's say in their 40s and up, is to go for a yearly vaginal ultrasound. And she said, had she gone for that yearly vaginal ultrasound, they would have caught it earlier. And I remember just that takeaway from so many years ago. So and I know it may not be feasible for everybody to go for a yearly vaginal ultrasound. Maybe your doctor won't allow it. Maybe you're not in an area where you can access it. But if you could at least go for one after listening to this, that would be an important thing to go get it checked out and ask your doctor for.
And that's so true because I had after 2015, when I know I had this, I had had a full physical in 2016. I'd had another physical in 2022. I'd had x-rays because I was looking at, getting hip replacement and stuff like that. They saw the residual, they call them the calcified fibroids. After the fibroids shrink, that's what's left. That showed up on the x-ray. I had pap smears. At no point did anyone, and I'm just doing the regular checkup, right? Nothing was flagged, nothing. And so you're right. If I had had a vaginal ultrasound, it would have shown up. It would have been seen.
Mm.
And the outcome, with the exception of the ileostomy, would not have changed. I would still, because that is I've always said, if you have a surgical option for cancer, take it, right? If you can skip the chemo and radiation and you can have it removed, if you're ready to lose whatever it is you're going to lose. And at my age, after menopause, I didn't really want to lose my body parts. I've never believed that it's ideal in any way, shape, or form, and that they're useless. I don't believe they're useless. I'm just discovering what I may or may not, be as a result of them being my body parts being gone. But still, from a cancer perspective, it's the quickest, it's the easiest resolution. And if it allows you to skip chemo and radiation, then that's the way to go, because as I said, that's where you're going to run into the what ifs. And I'm not saying I'm, home free. We know I won't get ovarian cancer again because it's gone, but we don't know that I won't get something else. It's highly unlikely. The statistics are extremely low for that. And because there was no metastases of any kind, it was so non-metastasized that they couldn't even tell me it was a cancerous tumor after the first initial pathology. So they do a pathology while you're in surgery, and then they do a deep dive pathology, which comes about 3 or 4 weeks later.
Wow.
And they were saying, well, it could be the non-cancerous kind of cancer tumors, like the ones that don't metastasize. Like that's how it
Wow.
was just
Contained it was.
how contained it was. Yeah, yeah. So, but you know, had I gone sooner, I would still have had to have the hysterectomy, oophorectomy. They wouldn't have done anything else. There's just no way.
Did your doctor give you the option of getting chemo radiation? Because you're saying that like if somebody has the option. So was it something that was an option, or they were just like, you don't need it?
They're like, they came, they're really funny. I'm sorry, because they have their things they think are good news, and and I see things differently, right? But yeah, so they came in, or she came in, I should say, and she basically said, "Oh, I've got good news. You don't have to have chemo or radiation." I'm like, I already knew that. So,
Mm.
but they were so excited. Like this was a gynecological oncologist. They were so excited that I didn't have to have um, chemo or radiation. They don't want to do it if they don't have to. They
That's
know.
good. That's
They
good to
know,
know.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good to know too. And then it's so great to hear that it was so contained that you didn't need it. So, two things. One is the ileostomy. Can you explain what that is? Because I know for a lot of people who are listening, they may not understand what that is. So, and then I want to talk about the implications because you being who you are, a digestive health expert. Let's talk. I want to talk about what kind of impact that has on the colon.
Well, of all the things that happened, this was the one that bothered me the most. It's the only time I got emotional through the entire experience is when they told me that they had given me the temporary ileostomy. So basically, they create what's called a stoma, and they reroute your small intestine material. This is different from having a colostomy, which is where part of the colon is still there, and it's colon material that's going into a bag. In an ileostomy, it's only the small intestine material that's going into a bag. So there's this stoma on that they put in the, just on the side of you there, and they reroute they disconnect the colon from the small intestines,
Okay.
and so everything goes into the bag that comes out of the small intestines. So you eat your food, and whatever is happening to it stops at the intestine. So it never makes it into the colon, which is when your bacteria gets fed, right? The remnants of your food is fed, when stuff moves from the small intestines into the large intestines. So it goes into this bag, and then you have to dump the bag. And I've learned a lot about what food looks like when it goes through the small intestines. Let's put it that way.
Mm.
It's not poop. So an ileostomy, you aren't having poop in a bag. You're having remnants of food. So whatever happens digestively between, it moving from the stomach into the small intestines, that's what's there. And then by the time it gets to the end of the small intestines, it goes into the bag. It was a very unpleasant experience. They didn't install this stoma correctly. So the food did not come out through the stoma into the bag. It came out from underneath the
Ooh.
stoma onto my skin, burned my skin.
Oh my gosh.
I had great pain and discomfort. I couldn't get rid of it fast enough. The one upside of it, I could eat whatever I liked, as many calories as I could put into me. I was very underweight. I was trying to gain weight. It was hard to gain weight because the food just wasn't in me long enough to be absorbed. And so I learned something about, maybe our assessment as to when we absorb our nutrients isn't as correct as we think. And it isn't all done in the small intestines, because I could just tell, and it was passing too fast. If you remember, Andrea, we were taught that it takes, 1 to 2 hours before it hits the colon.
Mm.
Well, this stuff was hitting the bag within 30 minutes, no matter what I ate.
Mm.
So between 30 minutes to an hour after eating, most of it would be in the bag.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That does
Hmm.
not make any sense.
So was it
So
you in particular, or do you think was it like what do you think was the reason? You just think that the science is off, or do you think that it was perhaps your N of one experience?
I honestly don't know. And if I could ever find myself an expert on ileostomies. So that was the other thing. very poor information about the whole process, no one to ask, because remember, it was a
Oh,
gyne-onc, as they call them, a gynecological oncologist who performed the surgery, not
right.
somebody who's a gastrointestinal specialist, which is, I'm assuming, who normally does it. I don't really know. And so I didn't actually have somebody who's a specialist in this. There are these special trained nurses who help you, use the bag, change it, protect the skin. Not that it ever protected mine, but whatever. There are those who know quite a bit. But from what I can tell, from what they told me and what other people, my complaints were similar. They were
Hmm.
experiencing the same thing. The bags leak, by the way. That's another really fun experience. Um,
Wow. You would think that this was something that they wouldn't be such a horror experience. Like you, so I guess for those of you who are listening, if you know anybody who is an expert in this, please email me and I'll put you in touch with Lorene, because I think this would be something to explore, because obviously people are having it done and they do that can you just explain why it was needed?
Well, again, so this is the one thing I question again about what they did. They said it was because it was pressing on the tumor was pressing on the colon and damaging it. And so they made the decision that the damage was not correctable. So they cut out, a little tiny bit of my colon, um, and disconnected it so that it could heal. I'm assuming that's what they did. That's what they said they were going to do before I had the surgery.
Okay.
But that was why. But I, being the holistic person I am wondering if they had left it alone, would it have healed on its own?
Mm.
The colon is pretty resilient. So would it have healed on its own? Because then that wouldn't have been necessary. That being said, we want to take the
Proper
positive
precautions.
attitude. I now know what it's like to have an ileostomy. I can help others.
Mm.
But
Well, and also because you are a digestive health expert, it's so interesting that that happened to you, right? So, I do believe everything happens for a reason, and it's awful what happened to you. But like you said, the silver lining is now you can help other people. And if it's such an under educated, under researched, under known, informative area, then someone like yourself will add so much value to people who actually need the help.
it is, and it's different than having it permanent.
Hmm.
So some people have this, and that was a risk. That was a risk. Um, Even when they reconnect it, they said it's still a risk that, you can have a hernia if if you strain too much to try and poop, and there's a clip in me now that holds the things together, which I don't really understand what that means, what's that's like long term. What's the clip made of? Like, you can't even get this information and like with a really good hard Google, because there's different
Wow.
procedures and different, because if the doctor doesn't tell you, and I asked questions, but they are not specialists in this, so they don't have the answers. They just know what they've seen with multiple patients. They've done this too. And it's not that they do this a lot, because they are gynecologicals. I mean, gynecological oncologists, right? They don't do this all the time. They've done it, but they're not necessarily doing it all the time.
That's
And that's the frustration, is the lack of knowledge on their part. They do what they do very well. They know what they know very well. They know the outcomes of what they do. They know the statistics, they know the options they have, but they don't know anything outside of that realm.
But wouldn't they bring in experts who do that?
That is the most shocking part to me, because my experience, okay, so when I was first hospitalized, I was hospitalized because I kept falling backwards. And I was so weak because I wasn't having enough food. This is over a very short period of time, by the way, maybe a couple months. So I was
Mhm.
taken to the hospital, and they found the mass. And the first thing they did was put in nephro tubes in to drain my kidneys. So the person who was called in was a urologist. And so my experience up at, this was in a hospital that's just near where I am called Cordalucci. They call every time something, oh, this specialist, this specialist, this specialist, right? But for cancer, they ship you off to either in Toronto, Sunnybrook, or Princess Margaret, which are the two big cancer centers in the city of Toronto. And so I went to Sunnybrook. So once you are in Sunnybrook in the cancer center, it's up to the oncologist, gynecological oncologist, to make the determination. And the only specialist they called in, because my legs swelled up, was somebody who specialized in thrombosis. That was the
Wow.
only other specialist I had, and the specialist that I had was also an oncologist. So like they really, once it's in the cancer sphere, they're like, really, this is the cancer sphere, right?
Is there anything that the patient can do to advocate for themselves?
Well, you see, again, maybe this is probably because I know so much about how the body functions. I'm like, well, they're not going to give me the information that I want. They're not going to give me the holistic perspective. They're not going to give me the what I can do perspective. They're going to give me statistics. So I didn't advocate as much as possible. I didn't, and I really did want to get away from them. I was like, as soon as I was operated on, I'm like, okay, I want to go. I'm done. And yes, I've gone back several times because of follow-ups and stuff like that, and more CT scans, because they had to do CT scans and colonoscopies and endoscopies to do the reversal of the ileostomy.
Right.
But at no point, so you're seeing somebody doing a colonoscopy, and he doesn't know. Yet he does colonoscopies all the time. I don't know what their specialty is. Well, they do the endoscopies and the colonoscopies, and I had to go to a special place for that.
It's so
Yeah,
siloed, right? It's like everybody knows what they know and then like doesn't interact, but you would think that they would call other specialists to come in to help you. That is, wow.
yeah. It really gave me an insight into the medical profession, what they're good at, and where they're gaping holes. And the biggest frustration I have is, because of what I know, I would have loved to have, and the same thing happened when I had my hip replaced. I wanted to have the discussion like, well, what about these holistic elements? How would they fit into my recovery? Like, hip replacement is not so bad because you get the physio and stuff like that, which is really good. Physio was amazing for me when I was recovering from my hysterectomy. I couldn't walk without a walker when I got out of the hospital. So they sent physio people to give me exercises to do in the respite home where I was. And the exercise component has made its way into the medical model, which is a really, really good thing. So for every
Right.
type of health issue, they get you up. A physio person comes into you in the hospital, and an occupational therapist, and then
Right.
they make arrangements for physio after you're out. Like that aspect has really done a good job of making its way into the medical model. But from the food perspective, don't even get me started. Here's somebody who's not eating. They're really, really weak. And no time at all was spent on how to get more food into me. And I have lovely, lovely friends and colleagues. I had people who were running around trying to find me things in the health food store that I could eat, because I couldn't eat anything that was too crunchy. I couldn't eat, and like there was all these things I couldn't do. So we're trying to find something soft with more fiber, with more like, and because there was nothing in the hospital, there was nothing, nothing, nothing that they would give you. They didn't even send a dietitian in to see me.
Really? They know nothing from it. Well, that doesn't surprise me from a nutrition standpoint. And hospital food is notorious for not being healthy, right? So, like, what were they feeding you?
Just regular meals. So the your basic, like there would be a piece of meat and some vegetable and some kind of starch on a plate, no salt. Um, at the first hospital I was at, Cordalucci, they didn't have any salt. I found out as I'm leaving Sunnybrook, they have salt if you'd asked for it. I didn't ask for it. Apparently salt's really good when you have an ileostomy, because you lose a lot of sodium when you have an ileostomy. So I could have had all the salt I wanted. But when you have an ileostomy, there's things you're not supposed to eat. You can't have any legumes, you can't have any nuts, you can't have any hard vegetables. So like carrots and stuff, if they're cooked, fine, but if they're, with the cellulose, they can't, you're not allowed any of those. So that was the only time I saw a dietitian, was when I was leaving. I'd been in 2 different hospitals. I'd had this problem with eating. I was drinking Ensure because it's all I had and I didn't like it. I would try to eat little bits of food that they gave me if I could get it down, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. Nobody cared what it was. And I'm like, but that's why I ended up being hospitalized. That was the biggest, not the tumor. The tumor was contained. It was what was happening to my digestive system that was causing all these issues, and nobody cared. And I would complain, and nobody
And
cared.
nobody listened. So in hindsight now, that what you went through, what do you feel that you could have done differently?
Well, obviously going sooner and avoiding, I know I would never have avoided the hysterectomy. They tried to give me a hysterectomy 20 years ago with endometriosis, and I said no. And in retrospect, it wouldn't have made it, well, I wouldn't have had the cancer, that's for sure. But the big takeaway for me is, frequent testing is a good thing. Don't be afraid of testing. I was never afraid of testing. I was just too busy, and I didn't make time for that. So that would be the thing that I would do differently, is more testing. Get it done sooner. I would have been found sooner. No ileostomy, which would have been nice. And I would, at where I am today, I would already know the overall outcome. Like, I have to wait a few years before I can say for sure about anything. Like I said, the chances are extremely unlikely that, anything else is going to occur. But you don't know. There's so many factors that go into somebody developing cancer. Stress was a big one for me. The effect it had on my sleep, those are 2 really huge factors for cancer. But other than that, the only other thing I can do is continue to do what I've done, which is load myself up with nutrients, do as many different things that help cellular repair. Like, there's so much good stuff out there that you can try. It's all I can do, but I did recover fast, again, because they said I was so healthy. Stop saying that.
But you are, because don't forget too, and I actually am happy to hear that the doctors kind of look at that. I mean, I know that they look at those markers that you talked about earlier as being unhealthy versus healthy, but the truth is the way you ate played a massive role, like you said. So, and it played a role in your recovery too. You were telling me before, and I'd love you to talk about that, because you were saying that you recovered quickly, and you believe it's because of the lifestyle that you led. So can you share a little bit about what you did?
Well, so that was a tricky thing, because I was in a respite home, and so they were feeding me. But I was fortunate at this particular place. It's I don't know if you know this, Andrea, but in the city of Toronto, a lot of the retirement homes, the ones that people pay to go to, not government run, but the nice
Private.
ones, they often take in respite. So they'll have a few places for respite, right?
Okay.
And this place was very nice. It's in Richmond Hill, where I live, and they had a real chef. So when you got dinner or lunch, it was real food. Was it organic? No. And you could tell this chef had some nutrition knowledge, because unfortunately he was trying to make it as healthy as possible, and some of the things he was sticking in there were legumes, which I couldn't have, or nuts, which I couldn't have. Like, yeah, so there was a bit of issue there. But they allowed you to change things. So I can say, okay, could you give me a bigger salad? Can you send me up some fruit? Can you, so I could direct a lot of that. And then I was it was like a little studio suite. So I had like a bed and a sitting room and a kitchenette, and it was very nice. Anyway, it was like being in a hotel, actually. better than a hotel, actually. It was very nice. So I brought in food, obviously, and had it in the refrigerator. So I had my organic cheese and I had my organic butter, and I had different holistic things that I could have in the refrigerator. Anything that was dry, I would bring in, so that I could get the nutrients I wanted. I was going slow on the supplements because with the ileostomy, I knew I'd be wasting my money.
Yeah.
So I just did some magnesium and a few things, right? And then as soon as that ileostomy was reversed, then I went gung ho.
Mhm.
I'm back home. I can cook all that I want. I'm loading up on nutrients. I take a green powder that it's basically fermented fruits and vegetables, organic fruits and vegetables. I take that every day because then I'm just getting extra nutrients along with what I'm eating. This is how I load it up. I'm taking a ton of supplements at the moment. I don't want to do that long term, but I just thought about it logically. So, my colon had been disconnected. What am I going to do for my colon now that it's reconnected to help it? I'm going to take, obviously, probiotics. I'm obviously eating prebiotics, but my smoothie bowl in the morning has colostrum in it. It has collagen in it. It has glutamine in it, because I know all of those things are great for the colon.
Mhm.
And so the goal is, and I started taking something called nucleotides, which are good for the colon. I'm now looking at peptides, which I haven't ordered yet. I'm just doing the research and finding things that are going to be good for my gut bacteria and good for my colon. And at your suggestion, I did do that test from Vitrac
Good.
to see where my colon bacteria is at, because I'm very, very curious. And I'm doing that. I'm doing liver support because I know a CT scan showed some small gallstones and a little something on the outside of the liver. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that was an area of imbalance that played a role in all of this. So I'm doing some liver work. I'm just aware. I'm just being really totally aware of what could be out of balance and working on that. Walking 3 times a day. Oh, by the way, that's something I also discovered, that walking 3 times a day is better than walking once a day a longer distance.
Hmm.
That you'll get more health value, because I said I was walking with a walker, and I started walking with the walker in the hallways of the respite home, going up and down and up and down and up and down. But I did it 3 times a day. And when I came home and started walking further distance once a day, it didn't seem to feel as good as when I was walking 3 times a day. So I started walking 3 times a day, or at least 2, and it makes a bigger difference, especially if you're somebody who sits in front of a computer all day, like I tend to
Yeah,
do
to
with
move more.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of beneficial things that a person can do. And what I would hope people will take away from this is, you do what you can do. Don't wait for someone to tell you to do it. Don't wait for a doctor to give you the instructions. You know that exercise is good for you. You know that certain foods are good for you. Like, do it. If you can do it, do it. Whatever you can do it.
What would be the nutrition that you would recommend for people who've had a hysterectomy and they're going, and let's say they can control what they're eating? What would you recommend that they include in their diet?
Let's see. Personally, I would do things that are good for balancing blood sugar. Now, that may seem strange, but the reason I say that is because of the connection between the adrenals and the and blood sugar and stress and all that stuff, and the hormones that we need once we've been through menopause. So if I want to not take hormone replacement, and when I say hormone replacement, I don't necessarily mean HRT, I mean maybe bioidenticals. I'm not saying either way, right? But if I don't want to do that, and so far it doesn't seem to be necessary, I have to be really good to my adrenals, which means I have to do the things so that means adrenal adaptogens as a supplement, but it also means watching the blood sugar, not taking, I don't drink coffee. I don't, I do have a cup of tea here, but I don't have that often. Do eat chocolate though. But anyway, not all the time. Do like some
I like
chocolate.
chocolate,
Yeah,
dark
yeah.
chocolate.
I've never had chocolate bother me. I never noticed any kind of perk me up from a chocolate versus something like a really strong black tea can perk me up. But so I don't really think I'm overly affected by the caffeine in chocolate. And it's part of a whole food anyway, right? With good fat in it and that sort of thing. But yeah, that would be the big thing, is to support the adrenals. And then the other thing, of course, is you need nutrient density. So you need fruits and vegetables that have high nutrient content. So you want your cruciferous vegetables. You want your liver support vegetables too, because they help the adrenals too. So you want your cruciferous vegetables, you want your berries, you want your lemons and your limes, you want your whole grains. If you do legumes, they're good too. I'm not a big legume person. My idea of a legume is peanut butter, which I do eat. Natural peanut butter, of course, organic. So this is where you want to go. You want to be in that sort of make sure you get lots of those. And if you're a meat eater, then just make sure it's good quality meat and it's a reasonable portion size, not overdoing it. If you're a vegan or a vegetarian, then watch your protein sources and making sure you're getting enough protein, because that is something that happens with a lot of people. They're eating too many fruits and vegetables and they're not eating enough grains and legumes and nuts and seeds, right? So
Yeah.
all of those things.
I call the liver loving foods, like, and also bitter foods. The liver
Yes.
loves bitter to help with making bile. So bitter, arugula, kale, like you said, the cruciferous are great. Brussels sprouts, like any of the bitter foods are amazing. So that's good. Thank you, Lorene.
All right. Well, and again, it's not the good news is you can have fun eating. You can make foods that taste really good using herbs and spices and good fats and just
Yeah.
make it tasty. Enjoy your food.
And I think that's what you drive home a lot too, is enjoy your food because you love to cook. And when you're cooking, you're always experiencing. I remember years ago, we did a video together. You came to my house. This was like I was in another house. Do you remember? And we did a
Yes, I
video together.
remember.
It was like our
Tep,
naturally savvy minute or so, our naturally
yeah,
savvy video. It was so funny.
Tep chocolate chip cookies.
We did. I remember. My gosh, that is so long ago. Oh my gosh, it's like amazing. We've known each other a long time. I love it.
Yes.
Well, I'm happy you're okay, Lorraine. I'm happy that that you have come out of this, and I'm sorry to hear that you went through this, but I'm happy to hear that it was a good outcome, that you know, everything was contained, and now you're on the road to recovery.
Yes. I'm glad to. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on my podcast.
No problem.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Lorraine. And like we talked about, the biggest takeaway is if you don't feel good or it feels like something is off, please go to your doctor and get it checked out and get tested just to rule everything out. So please leave a review for Menopause Reimagined. I would appreciate it. And I appreciate you spending the last little bit with me because I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing, but instead you chose to listen to my podcast. I appreciate you, and I'll see you at the next interview.